You have been invited by letter and email to tonight's event as you are an EFS Tranche 5 hire participant. You will have received your agreement in February and are ready or will be soon starting your grazing programme within the scheme, and no doubt started or getting prepared to commence your capital works. I would like to thank you all for joining the scheme, and for some of you particularly for persevering over several years with applications. Society recognises some of the additional value of your habitat land beyond normal agriculture through this scheme. Now, last week I met up with the staff who are inspecting the scheme and showed them round our hill farm environmental works. The conversation naturally included inspection issues, the increased inspection rate for this scheme, the incredible disappointment of good work completed in the wrong place, the lack of communication between farmers and planners, and the detail of the audit office following up the inspections. So we'll chat more about that later. The aim of the event tonight is to provide you with an update on understanding your habitat management plan, commitment schedule, keeping grazing records, calculating the stocking rate limitations, accessing resources, and issues that have arisen at higher inspections. We want you to have a successful, issue-free participation within the scheme, both for your farm business and the valuable habitat land that you manage. Okay, Robert, I'm going to hand over to you to start the presentation, please.
Okay, thank you, Brian. So yes, just understanding your agreement. So we'll take a quick run through some of the detail. So just a summary really tonight, what we cover. So you can see there just on the list, first one, aim of EFS hire. So what's the purpose behind EFS hire? What does your agreement consist of? How do you access your agreement? What's in your Ssrnp? So that's your site-specific remedial management plan. So everyone here tonight will have one of these plans. So we'll take a look at that. And then just towards the end, what will DERA check? So what is checked at inspections? Some common non-compliances and a little bit of information on calculating stocking rates. So just the aim of EFS hire, obviously quite important. So it's to bring designated sites and priority habitats and species under favourable management. So that's the aim of EFS hire. So what are habitats or what are priority habitats? So these are semi-natural areas that are valuable to nature. So if you're here tonight, everyone or certainly the vast majority of people are here because they have a habitat on their farm. So that's a semi-natural area, and essentially that's an area that resembles, it still has the plants and the species that would be there without intervention from man. So there's still something there that would be there naturally. Those habitats, they fall into a wide variety of categories. We have grasslands, we have wetlands, we have woodlands, we have moorlands or peatlands, and we have coastal areas. So the folks here tonight will probably split across those 5 different categories. Two of the most common, certainly on the left-hand side of your screen, you'll see purple rushgrass. So that's a grassland that has plants within it. There's a range of semi-natural plants that you'll find in purple rushgrass. And then on the right-hand side of your screen, you have blanket bog, so typically found in the uplands. So those are probably 2 of the most common habitats that are found across EFS hire agreements. So getting into the bones of it, so what does an agreement consist of? So the first point here you'll see is a commitment schedule. So this is a list of options and capital items that you have agreed to complete. We'll have a look at it in a minute. It's a good summary document, and it gives you the full range of your options and the work that you have to complete. The second point there, a site-specific remedial management plan. So you'll often see that referred to as Ssrnp. So that's basically your management plan that contains the full detail of the management that you need to complete on each of your habitats. There's a map that accompanies that, and we'll have a look at just a quick look at a map towards the end. Third point there, EFS hire terms and conditions. So again, that's the detail behind the whole agreement. And at the bottom of the list, an EFS specialist plan. Now, that's only where applicable. There'll only be a small number of people that will need an EFS specialist plan. Again, that only takes in a few people. So it's really the first three things on the list there that will apply to most folks tonight. So how do you access your agreement? Going forward, you will need a copy of your agreement, either in hard copy or on downloaded onto your computer. To have any chance of success in EFS, you need to have that agreement at hand and you need to know its contents. So that can be accessed on the DERA online services. So you can see this is just a screenshot of the DERA web page, and over towards the right of that in the quick link section, you will find DERA online services, and you can go through a couple of steps to get into your DERA portal. So that's where you'll find your agreement. Once you're in there, you can view your agreement, you can download it, and then you can print it if you wish. That will contain obviously your commitment schedule, your Ssrnp or your site-specific remedial management plan, and then your map and your terms and conditions. So it is absolutely essential that you have that agreement. If we only take one thing away from this evening, is that you need to have that agreement and be aware of its contents. And then just at the bottom, we've mentioned EFS specialist plans. They're available in hard copy. The few folks that have those there will likely be aware of them already. So it's really your commitment schedule and your Ssrnp and your map are your three important things here, and they're accessed via the online portal. So absolutely essential. We'll just have a quick look just at what these documents look like, just so that you're aware of what they are and what they contain. So this is just our an example of a commitment schedule here. So you can see in this example, it gives at the top in the blue box here, it gives the effective periods. This agreement in this example, it's an agreement that runs from 2018 to 2022. So you can see it lists the fields. There's 3 fields, 3A, 5, and 11 mentioned here. So if we just take 3A as an example, we can see that in this case, the habitat, so it's grassland, and it's categorized as purple moorgrass and rush pasture. So that's the picture of the grassland that we looked at just a few minutes ago at the start. And we can see there is 0.3 hectares in that field. We can also see if we move down in field 3A, as part of your EFS or as part of this person's EFS plan, they have elected to complete some rush control. So in this field 3A, we have primary rush control of 0.23 hectares. And if you can see, the next one is follow-up rush control. So primary rush control is generally done in year 1 at the start, and then follow-up rush control, as you can see, kicks in years 2 to 5. So that's important, just to note that the commitment schedule gives you your habitat, tells you what it is, and tells you the different items of work that you have to complete. So as Brian's already mentioned, it is crucially important that if you have your rush control to do in field 3A, that you do it in field 3A and not in field 5, because that's the last thing that we want. Just moving on down, just as an example, you can see in this example, field 5, we have a gate and 2 posts and also a stock-proof fence, and it gives the length there, for example, of the fence. So a very important document, lets you know what your habitats are and the work that you need to complete and what year it has to be completed in. So year 1, years 2, and years 3, and that'll go on to years 4 and 5. So just as an example there, and I'm sure most people, if not all, will be aware, in EFS, most of the works is completed in the first year. So just if you take that stock-proof fence as an example, you can see there that 79 meters is completed in year 1. So it's not spread over the 5 years. So that has to be completed in year 1. And then obviously that's maintained for years 2, 3, 4, and 5. So that's our commitment schedule. moving on, we will just have a look at a site-specific remedial management plan, or Ssrnp. So what is this plan? So this is the plan that your EFS planner prepared, discussed, and agreed with you. So you should be aware of all the contents of this plan. So it states the EFS options and the capital items, or sometimes you'll see those referred to as NPIs, that you should complete to bring your land under favourable management. And it includes detailed information about the management requirements you must follow. So that'll include grazing periods and rates. So for all our EFS habitats, there is specific periods where you can graze those habitats, and with a specified number of livestock. And again, we'll take a quick look at that later on. It also contains items of work that you have agreed to undertake. So it will also include your rush control, your gates, all the details of those will be in there that you have agreed to undertake. Records that you must prepare and retain, and just some further advice that you should follow. So that's what's in your Ssrnp. So it states your options, what the habitat is, what the capital items are that you need to complete, that you have agreed to complete, to bring your land under favourable management, so to improve its nature value, if you like. And then it goes on to further detail, just specifying grazing periods and rates and other details like records. So we'll just take there's a few slides here that just run through what a plan looks like, just so that whenever you see it, you'll be familiar with it. So that would be what you would see on the first page of your Ssrnp, your remedial management plan, once you get it off the online portal. So you can see your farm will be broken into management units. So in this example, we have management unit 1, and it contains 4 fields. So field 4, field 10A, field 10B, and field 11. And they total 7.57 hectares. So generally your farm will be broken into these management units, and they tend to be blocks of land that typically run together or are managed together. So it cuts down the amount of records you need to keep. Instead of you keeping a record for every individual thing, it breaks it down a little bit for you. So just moving on down your plan. So if you remember, we had 7.57 hectares in this management unit 1. We can see that it's a grassland. It's purple moor grass again, and there's some descriptions that you will see here. So we can see that it's in the upper locker and ASSI. An area of concern that the planner has noted is heavy rush cover, and the summary of remedies is control of rush cover. So it'll let you see the details that your planner has put in there. Just a summary of the action. So again, we can see what the habitat is. So again, we've purple moor grass and rush pasture of 7.57 hectares. And then we can see our primary rush control. So that has to be on the 2.67 hectares in year 1, and the follow-up rush control after that. So it's important that rush control is done in the correct field and in the correct location within that fields or fields. And that's indicated on your map. So if you have a management unit there that maybe has 4 fields, you just need to ensure that your rush control is done in the correct area. Moving down, grazing regime. So this is where we get into the more of the nitty gritty, really. So you can see just in this example, so the site must be managed by grazing between the 1st of May and the 31st of December. So in this example, those dates are the only times that you can graze livestock. So 1st of May to the 31st of December. And within that, the stocking rate cannot exceed 1 livestock unit per hectare in each of those years. So again, we'll have a quick look at that later on. So that shows you the dates that you can graze and the number or the amount of livestock that you can have on during that period. And obviously, no grazing then is permitted between 1st of January to the 31st of April. So after tonight, it's important to go away, check what your habitats are. So check in this example, we have our purple mirrorgrass and rush pasture. Yours could be, it could be blanket bog, it could be a woodland, it could be any range of different habitats. So just check in your plan what the planner has noted down, what you have to complete, and what your grazing regime is. So going forward for the next 5 years, when can you graze and how many livestock can you graze there? So that's a very important thing as you start off. Just moving on down, this again is just another snip that's just been, or a screenshot that's been taken out of a plan. And this just goes into the more detailed requirements. So we can see in our grassland here, we'll just do a couple of examples. So drainage, so no new drainage. New drainage is not permitted. Existing field drainage, which is piped, may be maintained. I'll not go through these all, but there's different requirements for drainage for shucks, for field storage of bales and different things. We'll take this one, land improvements. So ploughing, cultivation, reseeding of any nature or liming is not permitted. And that's our purple mirrorgrass. So again, important that you read down through these. So obviously we can see this is all years. So this will be for the 5 years. So it's important that you read just so that you know what your requirements are going forward. Record keeping. Whenever you read through your plan, you will see there is a section on record keeping. So again, this has to be kept for all of the scheme years, so all 5 years. So just a quick look at the records that you will need to complete. So you will need to record grazing records. So for your habitats, if you're grazing them, so the date grazing started, the livestock type, so is it sheep or is it cattle, the number of stock, and the field numbers grazed. So for each of your management units, you will be noting down every year when grazing started, with how many animals, and when it finished. And those are records that you keep throughout the year. Field operations, so if any silage or hay is made, the cutting date must be recorded. The same for rush control, so the date any rush control was completed, and where it was completed in the field. So it was on the eastern side, the western side. Scrub control, again, same thing. So your records are really, it's a record if you're grazing within that block of land and all the field operations that you have completed. So rush control, scrub control, cutting of hay, cutting of silage, and anything else that's included. Records are very important if you do have an inspection. That's one of the first things the inspector will check, and that's just a check just to ensure that you're grazing your habitats right and that you're staying within the various requirements. So when you read your plan, just down towards the end of it, there's a section for traditional native breeds. So that's the Irish Moyle cattle option. Again, that'll probably only impact on a few people. But down at the very bottom, you will see a box that looks similar to this, if not the same, and it will say download Ssrnp map. So you've read through your agreement, and now it's basically time just to have a look at your map. So we'll take a quick look at what that looks like. So this is just a map of one field here, and we'll just have a look really at what it contains. So we can see the habitat here, which is the lilac, or the purpley colored pink background. So that's PRG, so that's purple rush grass. So that tells us what our habitat is. There'll be a key at the back of your map that tells you what all these abbreviations are. So that lets us know what our habitat is. This OVR section, so that lets us know that that's where we need to complete our rush control. And again, in your commitment schedule, so if you remember back to the commitment schedule, it specified that it was rush control. So if you have a polygon like this and you go and check, you will know that it is rush control. So in this example, this planner has said this is a purple rush grass field, that's the habitat, and there is rush control needs completed within this here section of the field. So whenever you go to do your rush control, you know that it roughly needs to be within this box. Just a few more things to note. SPF, so on the boundary here, so this SPF is stock-proof fence. So this person has elected and agreed with their planner to put a new fence up along here, and then also running along the southern boundary. So the purpose of that fence is to improve the management for this field. So it's possibly to stop stock coming from this side or coming from the bottom up. So it's to improve the management and improve the status, the favorable status of the habitat. So we see we've got our rush control, we've got our fences, we've got 2 fences, and we can see GPS here. So that's gate and posts down in the corner. So when you look at your map, you see what has to be completed and where it has to be completed. So again, just going back to what Brian mentioned at the start, it's important that whenever you do your work, that it's in the correct place. So if that's where your gate and posts need to be, that's where it needs to go. And the same with your fences. So if it's on that boundary, you know, it can't go along the top boundary or can't go along the eastern boundary. So it gives you an indication of what you have to do, and very importantly, where it has to be completed. So just a look at stocking rates. So as I mentioned, most of, if not all of, our EFS habitats have specific stocking dates and rates. So those are the dates that you can have your livestock there and the number that you can have in that area. So this is our 7.57 hectares. So the same example we looked at earlier, it's a grassland. So if you remember, that was, I think, 4 fields that were all running together. So this site must be managed by grazing between the 1st of May and the 31st of December at a stocking rate, an average stocking rate not exceeding 1 livestock unit per hectare in each year. So if we have 7.57 hectares in our block of land, and we can have 1 livestock unit for each of those hectares, that gives us 7.57 livestock units that we can have on that block of land. Now, I've just added in just at the bottom here what a livestock unit, the different types of livestock, what they relate to in terms of livestock units. So you can see we started a dairy cow, which is 1 livestock unit per hectare, and we go down till you'll see the different categories here. So a beef cow is 0.8, younger cattle are 0.6, and then we have sheep 0.5 and 0.2. So different types of livestock equate to different livestock units. So I suppose if you take the first example there, just the easiest one, if you had dairy cows, so we can have 7.57 livestock units. So we're allowed 1 livestock unit per hectare, and we've got just over 7.5 hectares. So that's 7.57 livestock units. So that would give us, if to stay within that, we could put on seven dairy cows. So that'd be 7 livestock units. If it was beef cattle, we could do that calculation again. We could have more beef cattle on there, beef cows on there, because they only equate to 0.8. So just taking a rough calculation of that, that's probably working out at about 8 beef cows. So we can have 7 dairy cows or 8 beef cows, and then we could do that calculation for the other types of livestock as well if we wanted. So we would have our different types of sheep there as well. So that's the background between the livestock units and how they're calculated. Just calculating your stocking rate. There is a stocking rate calculator tool that's available on the Deere website, and that helps you calculate how many animals that you can graze and for how long on each of those management units. It takes a little while to get onto it. There's 4 steps in it. It's one of these things that you just need to have a play around with, but it is good, and it's a good aid going forward just to keep you within the boundaries. So we'll run a few numbers through it, and we'll take a quick look at it. There is a training video on it. It's available on the Deere website in the EFS section. So it's something that you can come back to, or you can ask questions about at a later point. So if you don't take it all in tonight, don't worry too much about it. As I say, it's something that you do need to kind of come back to. So we'll just have a quick run through it really. So in step one, it's fairly simple. You put in your area. So we have 7.57 hectares. We know the habitat, so we can put that in. And we know the date that the grazing starts and when it ends. So 1st of May to the 31st of December. And then we have 1 livestock unit per hectare. So that's the information that we have already looked at. So moving into step 2. So this is where you punch in your numbers of your different grazing periods really. So we can see this in this example, this person has grazed this block of land on 3 occasions during that 1st of May to the 31st of December. So in the first bit of grazing, they had 24 beef cows and 24 cattle, and you can see that they had those on for 21 days. So that's the number of cows they had on, and the number of other younger cattle, likely calves, and they had them for 21 days. They then had 2 further periods of grazing, another one for 21 days, and then another one for 26 days. So it's important to note, you could increase your grazing above your 7.57 livestock units for a shorter period. So it's an average across the full time. So if you take the extremes of that, you could have 7 dairy cows on it from the 1st of May to the 31st of December, or you could have a higher number for a shorter period. So as long as that works out on average, and I think we see that in the next slide. So so in step 2, so enter your livestock numbers. So you can see that's what you'll be putting in here. So for each of the different periods that you would graze those fields. So that person has done a bit of grazing, they've left it for a while, and then they've come back on again with probably the same livestock later in the year, and then they had a 3rd grazing period as well. So it is a good help to show you, to give you a bit of assistance as just how many animals you can graze and for how long. Step 4, so in the background, the calculator, so once it takes your data, it will tell you, in this example, it tells us that our SR, so our stocking rate, is okay. So if it was too high, I think this box turns red, and it gives you a warning of, can't remember what the wording is, but it gives you a warning in here. So that's stocking rates. Again, if you need assistance with stocking rates, have a look at the calculator on the website. Have a look at the video. This here video will be uploaded to YouTube, hopefully by the end of the week. So feel free to have a look at it on YouTube, and you can play it through and pause it just to suit yourself. I'll look at some common non-compliances. So these are typically things that inspectors have found, common things that inspectors would find at inspections, and they're just things to be aware of so that we can kind of deal with these just before they arise. So the first one, claim accurately, probably the most important one. So deduct any ineligible features and measure work completed accurately. So from an EFS hire point of view, deducting ineligible features. So if there's anything that's ineligible within those fields, so if we have our grassland fields, if there is maybe an area of scrub, an area of rock, an area of farmyard, anything like that, if it is ineligible, just ensure you deduct it from the area of that field. So instead of claiming for our 7.57 hectares, if it needs to be 7.5, then just make sure you make that deduction. So claim very accurately. Measure work completed accurately. So this will, if we go back to the example on the map that we had of our field with our rush control and our 2 fences, our 2 bits of fences. So just ensure that you measure what you do accurately. So for your rush control, if it says in your agreement, if it was 2 hectares, but for some reason the field was too wet, there was a section you didn't get to and it was only 1.8, just ensure that you only claim for 1.8. The same for the fences. All of those fences on your agreement, the one we looked at earlier, I think was 79 meters. Whenever you went to do that fence, it is possible that there was only 75 meters that you could do for some reason. So just ensure that you measure accurately and that you only claim for what you complete. There's probably quite a few cases where you'll make your claim in May on your SAF and you mightn't have the work completed yet, either because of the weather or various other reasons. So you could be making a claim for work that you haven't completed yet. So make sure that if that is the case, that whenever you do complete the work, you measure it accurately, and then you go back and amend your claim accordingly. So that's very important. Just on that note, then, if we move over to the right-hand side of the screen, so amend your claim if needed. So an EFS SAF 3, so you will find one of those on the website. And a SAF 3 is just a simple form that allows you to make us aware that you intend to make a deduction for on your claim for work that hasn't been completed. So take our rush control as an example. You claimed for 2 hectares, but you only got 1.8 done. You would complete your SAF 3 to make us aware that you didn't get it all done. Same with our fences, same with the hedges we plant, same with the gates and the posts we put in. If there's something that you don't get done, make sure you complete a SAF 3 and let us know as soon as possible that needs deducted from your claim. A couple of other non-compliances. So number 3 here over on the left-hand side, did not read the Ssrnp. So that's our site-specific remedial management plan. As I said at the start, going forward, it is absolutely essential that you have this plan either in hard copy or on your computer, and that you are aware of the details so that you know what your habitats are and what work you have to complete and the requirements for those habitats. So when you can graze and the different field operations that you can or can't complete. So the common things that would come out of not reading this, so grazing outside the permitted dates. So we've obviously we'll have a range of habitats over all the different folks here tonight. So we need to ensure that we are grazing within the correct dates. So in our grassland example for the purple rush grass, it was the 1st of May to the 31st of December. It'll be different for many of those other habitats. So you need to check what your dates are and stocking rates to ensure that you have the correct number of stock on at the correct time of year. So that's very important, even here tonight, that you go to check that. Moving over to the right-hand side, number 4. So NPIs don't meet the standards. So NPIs are our fences and our enhancements that we've agreed with the planner that we're going to complete. So the common things here, incorrect materials. So that could be the wrong type of fence posts. It could be the wrong type of gate post. Incorrect sizes. So possibly our fences. If we just look at the picture down below here, we have minimum widths for our intermediate post. I think it's 4 inches. I'm happy to be corrected on that later. And different specifications for the barbed wire and the sheep wire. So again, you can see here strainers, 125 millimeters top diameter. So you need to make sure that you have the right materials and that they are the right sizes, so that they're the right posts, the right types of wire, and all the other different things that you would be completing, whether it be drinking troughs, anything like that. So just ensure that what you're doing meets those standards. And what actually does happen quite a bit is incorrect location. So the fence ends up in the wrong place, or the drinking trough is in the wrong location, or the gate. So the last thing any of the inspectors want to see is you haven't gone to the expense of doing something. You've got it, it's there, it's looking great, but it's in the wrong place. So we want to avoid that at all costs. Insufficient records. So we'll just spend a minute just looking at what records should be. So this is a template of just an example of the records, the type of records that you would be completing. Now, this template, just the format of this is available on the DERA website in the EFS section. We would always encourage you to use this format because it just shows you what you need to record. So the dates, the options, the field numbers, and then the different types of livestock. So it helps you along. Now you can keep your own records, but we would always encourage you strongly to use this. And it also makes it it's very accessible for the inspector because at a glance they can see your different field operations and when you grazed your livestock there. So we'll just run through this one just as an example. So we can see the year at the top. So this one was 2020. It was Management Unit 1 and it was fields. That included fields 2 and 3, and there will be an area over at the right hand side for them. So in the activity log for that year, you can see that this person completed a bit of stock-proof fencing. They have the date they completed that, they have the code, they have the field number, and they have the lengths. So stock-proof fence, the field, and the length, and the data was completed. Moving on down, so primary rush control. So we can see they completed rush control. They completed 18th of July, and there's an indication there of how much they completed. So they completed 1 hectare. Finally, in the field operations, we can see so this is grassland again, purple moorgrass and rush pasture that we looked at the start. And this person rolled that. So they completed rolling and they rolled 4 hectares and they've given a date for that. So basically everything that you do, all your field operations within the fields that you have in EFS, you need to keep a record of when those were completed and if there's any lengths or areas associated with those, that needs to be noted down as well. So just erecting fence, rush control, and rolling. So that's an example of what was completed in 2020 in this management unit. Moving on down, we then get into our grazing. So we can see we'll just take the first line as an example, 20th of the 5th to the 20th of the 7th, so 2 months there, this person had 15 lambs on that block of land. And we can see there that total 2.25 livestock units. And you could use the calculator then to work out what that actually equates to and then what you're allowed to do after that. So an activity log of what you completed and then your grazing requirements. So again, important to have, and we would always encourage you to keep those at the time. It's just easier than going back in 6 months, 8 months, or a year and trying to remember what you did and when you did it. So it's easier and it's quicker just to keep the records at the time. One final non-compliance, I think it's the final one, new water troughs placed within 10 meters of a water course. So new water troughs funded under EFS must be at least 10 meters away from water courses. So just ensure that if you have water troughs as part of your agreement, that they are located at least 10 meters away from the water course. So one final slide, what's change look like? This is just an example. This is a woodland, so we can see on our left-hand side here, we have a woodland that has been used to supplementary feed cattle. We have a ring feeder in there. And then on our right-hand side, we have a similar woodland that has been closed off to livestock by, perhaps one of our stock-proof fences. So it gives you an indication of what change looks like. Doesn't happen overnight, takes a little while. Yours could be a woodland, it could be a grassland, it could be a peatland, could be a few other things. But it's a process of changing the management to bring it into a favourable condition. And this is the final one, so just a few contact details. So if there's anything after tonight that you need to query or you feel that you need to pick up on, you have the phone number there or the email address. The email address is quite good. Somebody will always get back to you, and it just allows people just to maybe look into the background of your query and your agreement. So if there is anything, drop a line to the EFS email address there, and someone will look into it. And if you need a bit of extra assistance with anything we've touched on, that is your best point of contact tonight. Okay, Brian? I think you're on mute, Brian.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you for a great presentation. Folks, I just remind you on the bottom right of your screen is a Q&A button. So please, this is a good opportunity to ask questions. There's no daft ones, and it actually helps. There'll be somebody else thinking of a similar question. A couple of comments. This email address is really useful to note that down, particularly for folks in the hire scheme, because sometimes you have very specific queries with a particular field, and it lets the officers go away, do a bit of research behind it, and come back to you with a written answer, which is quite useful for yourself as well. A couple other comments. We should mention the online training. So obviously you've a commitment to do your online training, and that is very brief. You might have 3 or 4 or 5 minute videos to watch and answer a few questions. You have through to the end of December to do that, but of course the earlier you do it, the better, because it's all about alerting you to the what you need to do for particular NPIs or particular habitats. So do that as early as you can. A couple of things came to mind. I suppose I should mention that the inspection rate is now going to be higher for this scheme. And that's due to a number of issues, but I guess really claiming accurately and amending your claim. That is the big ones that Robert was mentioning. And that claim amendment is really important. I'm going to bring in Alan at this stage. Welcome, Alan. You're on mute. You've followed my lead.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Robert.
Okay, we have a couple of questions coming through here. So we'll go with this question first of all. One coming through, no hire option. That's a phrase that comes along for various fields, and I guess no hire option means just that field isn't in the scheme. Any comments on that, Alan?
Yeah, well, it can be no hire option for a number of reasons. Probably one of the most common reasons would be that it has improved grassland and silage fields and the like. But there are other reasons for no hire option. There may be some other management agreement already in place from a previous time. Obviously, bringing it into the EFS would be classed as dual funding. Thinking and some of the wind farm sites, for example, there are habitat management plans associated with the planning for those. So again, a lot of that land would go down as NHO or no hire option.
Yeah. Okay, that's good, Alan. Thank you. Coming through.
Can I come in with a comment just to reiterate something which Robert was saying, and that's about you submit your claim for the works which haven't necessarily been carried out at that point in time. Now, having approved a lot of these plans, people are pretty ambitious. A bit like people are no different from myself. I've often said there's never a year goes by, but I plan to do more than I actually get done. And I know people who have agreements are no different from that. So when you put in your claim in May, if you see towards the end of the year you're not going to get this done, be very careful to notify us on that. Now, there's a change this year. Robert mentioned the SAF 3, and this is where you actually can reduce your claim then without penalty. This year, all of the year one, which I'm speaking to you all tonight, you will be written to at the beginning of November to either confirm that you have the works which you've claimed, confirm that you have them carried out, or if in the case that you can't get them done or you're not going to get them done before the end of the year, you actually reduce your claim. So that will avoid any awkwardness and loss of money at inspection time. So that's an important thing to do. But keep saying that, don't just rely on that. Oh, if I don't get it done, I can rectify that in November. I would urge you, the works that have been put on the plans are for a good reason, and try and get them done, because you really don't have a second crack at this. But you will all be written to at the beginning of November, and this return has to be made again before the end of December. So just make that point. But, just keep an eye on progress as you go through the year.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Alan. I'm going to have a look at quite a complicated question, and from that Alan has sent in, and this is a great example of one which would be it's slightly different, and it would be great for you to email the likes of this one to give somebody time to think and get back to you, or indeed phone, but both are good. So Alan has written, I have an area of PRG and BWG. Now the BWG area has increased as the fence was removed, and scrapes were created at the start of March. And scrapes are fantastic. I'll chat about them in a minute. I'm unable to erect the fence until mid-July. And there's a total area of approximately 8 acres. How do I stock this before fencing? Now, so quite tricky. Something we've been doing at the Hill actually is using virtual fencing, so collars on cows. That's another story, very, very interesting. But I'm going to pass this over to Alan. Have you any thoughts what we could do in this one, Alan?
I'm interested to hear you getting your plug in about your virtual fencing. So waiting for that. No, I'd really like to look at this one offline myself, but, to see what the issues are. Certainly when I'm looking at you with BWG and your scraping PRG, so be very, very careful what you're doing in terms of management there, not to disturb nesting birds. So, but I've looked, I'm thinking here temporary fencing, but I would urge caution in this one, because you're obviously dealing with a very sensitive site, and please get me the details offline, and we'll come back to you on that one.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of options. Yeah, absolutely, a couple of options, and certainly a temporary fence would be good. Actually, just to mention, habitat mosaics are a particular difficult issue, and many of you will have habitat mosaics. We've one field, 160 hectares, and there's about 4 different habitats in it. And it is tricky, and it has kept some folks out of schemes in particular areas because they just haven't been able to manage it. So habitat mosaics, we can set the stocking rate according to the mosaic, but obviously in this case we could have too many stock on the PRG side, and of course stock being stock, they'll head over, and then we'll have excess. They'll all be on the breeding wader side, and that'll lead to issues with nests getting tramped. So it is quite a specific one. So that one there, yeah, that needs communication with the EFS team, and I would encourage you to send that email through or make the phone call, so that you get an answer which is particular to your situation.
Yes, Brian, if they send it directly to you or Robert, and then pass it on to me, please.
Okay, or they can use the EFS with a field number, actually. It's always really useful putting a field number and a farm survey number, because folks can, the officer can check the classification of it as well. I just mentioned the scrapes are amazingly successful. Those are done very simply with the digger, and they provide this water source, because we've had 6 dry springs in a row, and that really access to water from April through to late June is absolutely key for all these ground nesting birds. Okay, let's go and look at a few other questions. Okay, Alan, is there a closing date in year 1 for the fencing to be completed by, including installation of gates and troughs?
The end of the year. But again, that's something which you will confirm in the following the letter you receive at the beginning of November. So you will be confirming that at that time.
Okay, thank you. Now, a question here, will the EFS team be at Balmoral Show? There will be a few folks available on the Caffrey stand, but not at different times of the year, or different times of the week. I'm not sure, Countryside Management, Alan, is there a team at the show?
Personally, I can't answer that because I'm not there that week. So I'm certain. Certainly, there will be someone able to point you in the right direction at Balmoral.
Okay. Okay. Christopher has asked a question here. Can you apply for peatland which previously hasn't been eligible for BPS single farm SAF form? So this is ineligible ground. So there's a few changes on this one. So there's lowland raised bog. So I'll pass that over to you, Alan.
Sorry, I didn't catch the beginning of that, Brian.
Okay, so can you add land? Really, I think it would be a good bit to look at. Can you add land as you go through this thing? But in particular, can you apply for peatland, which isn't eligible? You know, it's not eligible for basic payment scheme.
I'm assuming that this peatland isn't within their Tranche 5 agreement. Is that right?
Well, some ground, maybe lowland raised bog, you see,
Okay.
wouldn't have had eligibility in the past. So
right.
Yeah.
In the past, basically what you were getting paid on was land which had really an MEA. That's what your area payment was based on for EFS, with one exception in the past, and that was woodland. So although it had no MEA, you got a payment for that. Now, moving forward, that has increased to also include intact lowland raised bog as something which is eligible for an area payment. So those are the 2 exceptions.
Yeah. Okay. And again, I would put a field number and an email through on those ones there.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, a good question here from Philip. There's obviously an upfront cost of fencing. So when do I get the payment for the completed work? Is it similar to the wider scheme and payment completed in following May, April?
Yeah, the following spring.
Following spring, yeah. So partly, I suppose we should explain the reason why that is, Alan. It's really to do with clearing the inspections before payment can be made.
So some of the work is not very long completed at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because obviously you've the full time to complete.
Yeah, up until the end of the year to have the work completed. So after that.
Okay. Well, a question here from Chris. And obviously Chris has been in schemes for a number of years, and we started our schemes probably back in 1988, agri-environment schemes. So some of you could be through onto your 4th or 5th one possibly. So how come land that was species rich in the ESA scheme for a period of 20 years is now ineligible? That could be for a number of reasons, actually. So you want to make a comment on that one, Alan?
Okay, yeah. Now, land that qualifies for EFS hire is really in 3 categories. We've got we've got our Tier 1 land, which is the highest designation. Those are our SPAs, SACs, the Ramsar sites. We also then have Tier 2, which is the next down, and that is ASSI designated land, which hasn't been the higher designation of SPA or SAC. There are a number of those, so those are the top 2 tiers. We have then what we call priority species and habitats, and by and large, that's where your species-rich grasslands come in. Now, some of these are very valuable habitats, but are either not sufficiently valuable to be classified as ASSIs, or haven't yet reached them. They may well become ASSIs. Now, there is a process where planners can actually, where they see other land which they think should be classified as Tier 3 land, these species-rich grasslands that you're referring to, and there's a process where they can refer those through to NIA, and they consider these, and they may well become Tier 3 land in the following application period, and we'll have some of those come in each year where this additional land, which has been missed for whatever reason, has not been classified as priority habitat, do become eligible. So it's worth asking about that all the time if you see your planner. There is a process where that land, but it does need to be sufficiently good to be classified as priority habitat.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. I just, folks, I'm going to remind you as well, we're in May. This is the 9th of May, and I'll just remind you that it's really important that you put your claim in the SAF form. So our SAF form through to by the 16th of May. So do remember that initial claim has to go on, even though your work isn't all completed, and you still get a chance to do that amendment later on. And actually, the number of SAF 3s, that amendment form that Robert was chatting about, has increased every year as people have started to get used to using them. So that's where I suppose a lot of this comes down to communication, actually. So a lot of our communication has unfortunately gone digital, and that's just the way it is. But that it does actually make it easier at times once you get started down that road. Okay. So there's a query coming through here, SFP, SAF. So it's your basic payment scheme. It's done through a standard application form. So that's our standard one for the 16th of May. Okay, Cormac has a question here. Is it okay to clean open shucks and clear a track for fencing due to uneven rough ground running alongside? That's a good question, because there can be many times and you can be doing things at certain times of the year in your fencing which are difficult. So Alan, I'll pass that on to you, and I'll make a few comments myself.
I'm very nervous answering this one because these are all very individual cases. All I would remind you about, some of these things which are suggested are being asked here are, because of the designations of these sites, some of these things that have been suggested are notifiable operations, and if they're not within the Ssrnp, you must seek approval from NIA. So we'll be very, very careful doing anything going off piste, as it were. If it's not in the plan, don't be carrying it out without contacting DERA first. And it might be that that's fine to do that, but please contact them first. It's easier coming and getting permission on this one than to be found in non-compliance at an inspection. Be very, very careful erecting fences as well, because we've had a number of people have come to grief over this, where there's been some damage done as a result of the erection of the fencing. So be very, very careful. If in doubt, please ring us. We would rather talk to you for an hour than discover down the line that there's been a problem at the inspection. It's no one's benefit. So please contact us. But be careful anyway, because some of these some of your fields are within the most valuable environmental land in the country. So be careful what you do.
Yeah, and I just back that up and say generally cleaning open shucks, we leave that to the winter. It's actually open shucks are really important habitat because we don't have as many of them about. So any open water course really is really useful. So we would encourage you to delay that through into the autumn winter. We would be very careful about ground nesting birds at this time of year. So we would be generally saying anything like that, I'll be leaving through to mid-July. And then clearing a track. So having a think about that, does that involve a few winds? So that's vegetation. So remember, you've got your other cross compliance issues. You can't actually whack any vegetation down until the end of the nesting season, which is the end of August. So really, I think that one, Cormac, I'd be leaving that one through to September before I'll be tackling that one. And because you're in designated ground, as Alan says, it's important to keep tabs with EFS team or with your NAIA. You might have a phone number for your local officer with NAIA. Okay, I'm going to move down to a question from Philip. My agreement states 1 livestock unit per hectare. Okay, so it's a wee bit about that stocking rate. So really 1 livestock unit per hectare, does that mean a single beef cow over the course of the grazing season? It could mean that, Philip, or it could mean 10 cows for 1 day. That would be the same as 1 cow for 10 days. So really, that's the way of doing it. If you are pretty happy with how it's been grazed, you know, recently, you know, your planner thought the site was in good condition, you're probably grazing it pretty well. So if you go on to the livestock calculator that Robert was chatting about and just put in your numbers that you grazed last year and see what it comes out, that you'll get a good idea. So you just get used to using that calculator. And it's not something that you're going to have to do every single year or that often. It's once you get to grips with what that management requirement is in year 1, then to be honest, you've made it a lot easier for the rest of the years. Okay. Okay, Declan has a question. Okay, your planner can add land to your claim. So Declan's was done by an internal planner, off computer, no boots on ground. How can they add land in this case? Alan, do you want to?
Yeah, I'll come in that one, Brian. Well, number maybe slightly misinterpret what I said. The planner actually can't add it on. It can propose this to the NIA, and they make the decision as to whether it is eligible or not. However, in this case, and that's a very good point by Declan, need to notify us that, send us in an email about that or through yourselves to me, and we can look at that if he thinks that it's eligible or should be made eligible. We'll have a look at it. But again, it's not the planner decides what's eligible and what's not. They can propose this with this NIA makes a call in the end of the day, based on what they would have information on most of those sites. So they make the call then. But do please, if you think of something which has been missed, by all means, contact us.
Okay, we've come to the end of those questions now. There's still I'm just going to sum up, and I'll ask Alan for comments as well in a minute here. I'm just thinking really from chatting to the inspectors last week, they're a very nice bunch of folks, and really they want to see everything work at inspection. And I guess the times when things don't work is when people haven't read the instructions. Sometimes there is poor communication with the planner, and that's just because the plan's gone in and been passed doesn't mean everything's hunky-dory. It's getting work done in the right place is really, really crucial. there are, the audit office does follow our inspectors out, and the audit office is very precise, and it means the inspector does not have a lot of wriggle room. So I really would encourage you to really get it crystal clear in your head where things are meant to go. I suppose another comment is that in the recent biodiversity world rankings, the UK came 182nd out of 200 countries, and Northern Ireland is at the bottom of the 4 UK countries. So we do have a requirement to do better, and that is, it's really, you guys are at the forefront. So thank you again for being in the scheme, because you are the ones who have got the most important habitat land. Okay, I'm going to pass. Okay, I'm just going to check my questions before I pass over to you, Alan. There was a few more came in there. Philip is asking, if unable to cut hay due to adverse weather conditions and need to put into big bales, what form is used for that? Is it an email or a separate form?
I would make contact by phone. You know, there's no point to us hearing about this, you know, come inspection time, I didn't get the hay made for bad weather. If it appears that it's a really bad season for whatever reason, let us know then. But you know, don't set out to not make hay at this stage, because there's no such form for that. But if for whatever reason you think you're not going to be able to meet the conditions of that remedial management option, contact us immediately, and we can take it from there.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Now, do you any comments you want to make, Alan, as we go to close the session down?
I think Robert has covered it all. The only thing I would say about it is, these agreements, because they're computer generated and all the rest, they are very lengthy, and I can see from our end, once the agreements have been issued, you'll see where people have looked at them for a few times at the beginning. We can tell whether they've been looked at and when they've been looked at. Then there's a great period of time goes past when they're never looked at again. So I'm concerned about that, and that people maybe forget what they've maybe discussed with the planner, what they've actually read initially. So do revisit your plan during the year. I would go a bit further than that, and probably old school, I would have a look at your online plan. I would take notes about, and you'll have your own way of referring to various management units, what stock you can put on there, when they need to come off. I would have a small notebook, and it would make your life an awful lot easier. Just reminders, you know, stock off by such and such a date, and things like that. It makes the scheme an awful lot more manageable. And everything is within that agreement, but it's a bit off-putting when you take a look at some of these. Could be 70, 80 pages long, with depending on many management units or different habitats you have. So I would make my own notes for it, but please do refer to it during the year, because very often the agreements haven't been accessed from one end of the year to the next after the initial reading of it. And people forget, I forget, everyone's the same, they do forget the detail of it. So I would urge you to do that. But also make sure you get your claim in as well. We're running out of time for that. So that's really all I'd say. It's been very useful, and thank you, Robert and Brian.
Okay, folks, I'm going to draw us to the close. So thank you, Robert and Alan. Excellent contributions, and thank you, folks, for your questions. It really is useful when you ask questions. I hope you find the event useful, and a big thank you once again for participating in the EFS scheme. And how you manage your land is important to not only yourself and your own farm, but also to the wider biodiversity in Northern Ireland. So thank you very much, and good night.